You see their name light up your phone. A text, 3 words, "I miss you." It arrives while you're walking home under a sky smeared with dusk. Headphones in, the city around you drowning in noise and strangers. And yet those 3 words slice through the ambient blur like a blade. But something inside you doesn't respond right away. Not emotionally, not with the same clarity or certainty you used to feel. You wonder, why is that? It's not that you don't love them. You do, it's just there's a slow unraveling. Invisible. Silent. As if the thread that once tied your hearts in rhythm is fraying, molecule by molecule. Not because of a fight, not because of betrayal, but because of distance, and not even the physical kind. It is one of the most unsettling truths of human connection. 2 people can remain technically together, while drifting galaxies apart. Thousands of miles may separate them, yet the real chasm is somewhere else, more intimate, more insidious. You start asking yourself questions you're afraid to answer. Are they still the person you fell in love with, or just a memory you're trying to keep alive? Can longing survive repetition? Can desire endure a digital echo? Can love grow in absence, or does it begin to hallucinate? And most disturbingly, what if the version of them that lives in your mind is no longer real? This is not a crisis of romance. This is a crisis of perception, of time, of the self. Because in long-distance relationships, you don't just fall in love with a person. You fall in love with an idea, a memory, a projection shaped by past contact and present desire. And when the physical rituals of connection, touch, eye contact, spontaneous silence, are stripped away, all you have left is trust and imagination. But what happens when imagination falters? Think about it. In a world obsessed with constant communication, how is it that disconnection still festers like mold beneath the floorboards of our most cherished bonds? How can 2 people speak every day, send memes, schedule video calls, wish each other good night, and still feel unspeakably alone? Because love is not sustained by information. It's sustained by understanding. Carl Jung once said, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you." And this is where most long-distance relationships begin to starve, not from the lack of contact, but from the lack of resonance. How often do you hold back what you really want to say, just to avoid conflict? How often do you mute your needs, fearing they'll sound like complaints? How often do you feel like your emotional world is too complex, too fragile, too burdensome to share? The great irony is that long-distance love requires more vulnerability, not less. More intentionality, more emotional intelligence. It demands that you learn the language of silence, of tone, of timing. It is not a passive survival, it is an active creation. But most people don't treat it that way. They treat it like a waiting room, a suspension, a placeholder until real life can resume. And that is where the relationship quietly begins to die. What if this distance wasn't just a test, but a mirror? What if it's not about learning how to endure the space between you, but how to transform it? Because here is the great contradiction. Distance doesn't destroy love. Disconnection does. And disconnection doesn't come from absence. It comes from unconsciousness. If you are not consciously building your connection, it is unconsciously dissolving. So the question isn't, can long-distance relationships work? The real question is, are you willing to become the kind of person who makes love possible across any divide? This isn't a matter of time zones and text replies. It's a matter of philosophy, of psychology, of who you are when no one is watching. And so we begin. Let's dissect this invisible space, this ocean between hearts, and learn how to not only survive it, but thrive in it, to understand what trust, communication, support, and purpose really mean when the body is absent but the soul longs to stay close. Because love, real love, isn't measured by distance, it's measured by depth. Now let's uncover the map that leads us back to one another. Step by step. You've faced the question. You've sat with the discomfort. Now you are ready to build, not by luck or chance, but through intention. What follows is not advice in the casual sense. These are psychological tools, crafted not just by experts, but by lovers who've endured, therapists who've watched love unravel, and thinkers who've studied what holds us together in a world always pulling us apart. Each point is not a fix. It's a lens, a practice, a way of showing up for your partner and yourself. 1. Build trust as a daily practice, not a passive assumption. Trust isn't a thing you have, it's a thing you do. It's built in 100 invisible choices: how you respond to their vulnerability, whether your actions match your words, how you speak about them when they're not around. A therapist might tell you, what erodes trust most often is not infidelity, it's inconsistency. So ask yourself, do you follow through? Do you show up when you say you will? Do your responses feel emotionally present or transactional? Long-distance love thrives when both partners feel safe, not just physically but psychologically. 2. Set a sacred communication ritual. We live in an age where communication is constant but rarely meaningful. Endless texts, memes, voice notes. Yet most partners feel emotionally starved. Why? Because quantity replaces quality. Set aside time, sacred time. It could be nightly, weekly, whatever fits your rhythm. But when that time comes, you show up fully. No multitasking, no distractions. You speak as if your words are the thread holding the soul of the relationship together, because they are. Psychologist Esther Perel says, the quality of your relationships determines the quality of your life, and quality is built by presence. 3. Clarify the endgame. Love without direction becomes fantasy. You need a goal, a vision. Is there a plan to live in the same city eventually? A timeline for that plan? When there is no direction, anxiety creeps in. The relationship becomes suspended animation, a beautiful bubble destined to pop. Therapists warn that ambiguous commitment is one of the top predictors of emotional disconnection. Clear goals foster a shared sense of purpose. It transforms waiting into building. 4. Embrace vulnerability, even when it feels risky. Distance tempts us to filter ourselves, to be pleasant instead of real. You want to make the limited time feel good, so you suppress frustration, sadness, or fear. But doing so creates a counterfeit version of love. Real intimacy is forged in emotional truth. Say when you're afraid. Admit when you're doubting. Share what makes you ache. Vulnerability is the fire that forges closeness. As Jung might say, wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of one's being, but by integration. 5. Communicate in the other's love language. Words of affirmation, acts of service, physical touch, quality time, gifts. These are not cliches, they're psychological gateways. But here's the key. Most people instinctively give love the way they want to receive it, not the way their partner needs it. In distance, you must become fluent in your partner's emotional dialect. If they thrive on words, send voice messages, not just emojis. If they crave thoughtfulness, send care packages, or write letters. Speak their language, even if it's not yours. Love is translation, and fluency comes through repetition. 6. Use conflict as a doorway, not a dead end. Conflict in long-distance relationships feels heightened. There's no hug after the argument, no eyes to soften the blow. So what do most couples do? They avoid it. But avoidance rots the foundation. Instead, see conflict as a portal. It's a chance to understand how your partner thinks, what stories they carry, what wounds get triggered. Trained couples therapists suggest using language like, "The story I'm telling myself is," to open dialogue without accusation. Let disagreements deepen your connection, not divide it. 7. Share your inner world. Don't just share updates. Share insights. Your weird dream last night. The memory that hit you when you smelled coffee this morning. The insecurity that snuck up at work. When you share your interior life, you invite your partner into you, not just your calendar. Depth doesn't come from data. It comes from detail. The kind of detail only you can offer. 8. Make time tangible. Time becomes fluid when you're apart. You might not know what the other is doing in the gaps between calls. That ambiguity breeds anxiety. Create anchors. A countdown calendar to your next meeting. A shared journal. Recurring dates like movie nights or virtual dinners. Tangible time gives structure to longing. It transforms the abstract into the emotional real. 9. Have emotional check-ins, not just catch-ups. "Hey, how was your day?" is a start. But what if you asked, "What was the hardest moment for you today? What did you need that you didn't get? What did you love about this week?" Psychotherapist Dr. Alexandra Solomon calls these relational mindfulness questions. They reveal the emotional weather within each person and build empathy like a bridge. 10. Don't just plan visits. Create shared experiences. Love grows through shared meaning. When you're apart, build things together. Watch a series at the same time. Take an online course. Read a book and discuss it. Play a game. Start a shared playlist. Experiences become memory. Memory becomes identity. And identity is what gives a relationship roots. 11. Let each other miss one another. It's tempting to fill every gap with contact, but sometimes silence isn't neglect. It's space for longing. Desire needs oxygen. Don't fear pauses. Don't panic at unanswered texts. Learn to sit in that absence and trust it. As Nietzsche said, the value of a thing sometimes lies not in what one attains with it, but in what one pays for it. Let love breathe. Let it ache a little. 12. Grow together, not just parallel. The ultimate goal isn't to endure the distance. It's to evolve through it. Share your therapy journey, your spiritual insights, your struggles and breakthroughs. Show how you are becoming, not just for them, but with them. The strongest couples don't just make it work. They grow into something new, and in that process, they create a relationship not defined by distance, but depth. There is a reason why long-distance relationships so often teeter between devotion and despair. And it's not just the miles. It's not the time zones or flight costs or frozen video calls. The real enemy lives within, not in your partner, not in the space between you, but in the architecture of your own psyche. Let's begin here. You are not only relating to another person, you are relating to your image of that person. And that image is shaped not by reality, but by memory, fantasy, fear, and hope. Carl Jung understood this with surgical clarity. He wrote, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." In other words, Your partner is not just a human being across a screen. They are a mirror, and what you see in them is often what you refuse to see in yourself. Long distance magnifies this effect. The less physical presence you have, the more room your mind has to fill in the blanks, and those blanks become a playground for your unconscious projections. You begin to wonder why they haven't texted back, and before long, your mind has spun an entire narrative. They're bored of me. They've changed. They don't care. But is that them? Or is that your childhood fear of abandonment rearing its head? This is the hidden root. Long-distance relationships are not simply about love. They are about your relationship with uncertainty. And most people do not know how to sit with uncertainty without either clinging or withdrawing. Psychologically, this traces back to attachment theory. If your emotional blueprint was forged in an environment of instability, where love was conditional, where closeness was followed by punishment or distance, then your nervous system associates uncertainty with threat. Long distance activates that template. Every silence feels like rejection. Every delay feels like detachment. But it goes deeper. Jung believed that we are not fully awake until we face our own shadow, the repressed, denied or unconscious parts of ourselves. And relationships, particularly those tested by distance, drag that shadow into the light. In separation, you may become overly controlling, or you may become distant, avoidant. You may begin idealizing your partner, elevating them into a perfect savior. Or you may begin devaluing them, finding flaws, convincing yourself they're no longer the one. These polarities are not evidence of truth. They are evidence of projection. A Jungian therapist would tell you, what you cannot resolve within, you will try to resolve through the other. Now consider this. Why does it feel so unbearable not to know what the other person is feeling? Why do you panic when you don't get a reply? Because you are not just afraid of losing the relationship. You are afraid of losing yourself. Long-distance relationships force us to confront a terrifying reality. We do not control how someone loves us, and this is where Nietzsche's existential thunder rolls in. In Thus Spoke Zarathustra, he writes, "You must be ready to burn yourself in your own flame. How could you rise anew if you have not first become ashes?" What does that mean here? It means that love, real love, is not the avoidance of pain. It is the transformation of it. You must be willing to let the illusion burn. The illusion of control, of certainty, of guaranteed outcomes. Only then can a deeper, freer love emerge. A love not chained to reassurance, but anchored in inner solidity. There is also Schopenhauer, who argued that all human suffering is born from desire, the unending pull toward what we do not have. In this light, long distance becomes a kind of spiritual crucible. You want them, you long for them, you ache, and in that ache your ego screams, "Make it stop!" But what if the ache itself is sacred? What if the ache is not proof that something's wrong, but that something's real? Our society tells us that love must be convenient, efficient, instant. Dating apps promise endless options. Social media sells curated perfection. We have become addicted to the idea that if love hurts, something is broken. But this is a myth. As Viktor Frankl wrote, "What is to give light must endure burning." And this includes your love, the pain you feel when apart, the fear, the longing. It's not failure. It's the price of presence. It's the cost of caring deeply in a world that numbs emotion. So here is the philosophical truth beneath the psychology. Long-distance relationships are not trials of the heart. They are trials of the self. They ask, can you stay rooted in love without clinging to outcome? Can you offer vulnerability without demanding certainty? Can you grow in solitude while holding space for someone else's evolution? They ask you to abandon the fantasy that another person will complete you. and instead become whole enough to love without possession. This is where most long-distance relationships silently break, not from external stress, but from internal misalignment. Not because love wasn't present, but because the self wasn't ready. Because ultimately, a long-distance relationship doesn't just show you who your partner is. It shows you who you are, and once you see that clearly, you can never unsee it. You are not just in a relationship across space. You are in a confrontation with your own soul. And that is the beginning of everything. There is a strange kind of silence that follows awakening. Not the peaceful kind, the existential kind. The kind that dawns when you realize you've been acting on scripts you never wrote. Most long-distance couples believe they're simply navigating logistics, time zones, schedules, Wi-Fi signals. But beneath that surface, something far more complex is unfolding. The relationship isn't just challenged by separation. It is being rewritten by invisible forces, culture, cognition, conditioning. You think you're in a relationship with another person, but you're also in a relationship with an entire worldview. Let's start with this. Modern love is addicted to immediacy. We live in a culture that has systematically rewired the human brain. Instant messaging, next-day shipping, swipe-based dating, likes, notifications. The brain, especially the dopamine system, has become tuned to reward loops. And what is long-distance love but a disruption of those loops? In a relationship where reward isn't immediate, where presence isn't physical, where reassurance isn't constant, the brain starts to panic. It interprets the delay not as neutrality, but as threat. Enter the first unseen consequence. Anxiety hijacks intimacy. Your nervous system can't tell the difference between emotional delay and danger. The same neural circuits that were built to detect tigers in the wild are now firing. Because your partner hasn't replied to your good morning text, and this creates a cycle. Anxiety leads to overcommunication, which leads to burnout, which leads to detachment, which confirms your fear. The real tragedy? You think the problem is them, but the real problem is an overstimulated, under-reflected nervous system caught in a cultural machine. This brings us to the second consequence. Relationships become performance, not presence. Think about it. How many of your messages are crafted, edited, filtered for tone? How many calls feel like an interview? A performance review of your emotional state? Why? Because long distance removes spontaneity. And when spontaneity dies, authenticity begins to decay. You begin to curate yourself. You try to be good for them instead of real with them. You start thinking, how will this come across? Instead of, what am I actually feeling? It's subtle. But over time, your relationship becomes a brand, an image you maintain, a highlight reel shared through screens. And what's worse, you don't even know it's happening. This is what Aldous Huxley warned us of. In Brave New World, he wrote about a society so addicted to comfort and distraction that truth became irrelevant. In long-distance love, that distraction often comes in the form of overconnection, constant check-ins that simulate intimacy, but prevent real emotional risk, which leads us deeper into the third consequence. Emotional detachment masquerades as independence. You tell yourself, I'm fine alone. You start needing your partner less. You praise yourself for your self-sufficiency. And while autonomy is healthy, there's a dangerous line where independence becomes avoidance. Therapists call this defensive detachment. It's the armor you wear when vulnerability feels unsafe. In long-distance love, it's easy to rationalize. We're far apart. I shouldn't be so emotional. But beneath that logic is fear. The fear that if you need them and they don't show up, you'll fall apart. So you self-protect, you isolate, and slowly, silently, you begin living parallel lives. From the outside, nothing looks wrong. You still text, you still call, but the energy has shifted. The emotional doors creak shut, and both of you feel it, but neither knows how to say it. Why? Because we've been conditioned to fear emotional honesty, conditioned to believe that needing someone makes us weak, conditioned to pretend we're fine, even as our hearts scream for closeness. Now let's go even further, into society itself. Long-distance relationships are microcosms of modern alienation. We live in the most connected era in human history, yet loneliness has reached epidemic levels. Social media has created the illusion of community. Technology has promised closeness, but we are more fragmented than ever. Jean-Paul Sartre wrote, "Hell is other people, but perhaps hell is not other people. Perhaps it's our inability to truly connect with them." And in a world shaped by constant distraction, the skill of connection has atrophied. This is why long-distance love often fails. Not because of distance, but because we don't know how to sit with ourselves. We don't know how to handle silence. We don't know how to regulate our emotions without immediate feedback. We don't know how to offer love without demand, or hold space without needing to fix, because we were never taught. Instead, we were trained to equate attention with affection, to equate validation with love, to equate access with intimacy. And so when our partner is not immediately available, we feel unloved. Not because they failed, but because our cultural blueprint equates presence with worth. This isn't a personal flaw. It's a generational inheritance. And the final consequence is the most insidious. We begin to internalize failure. When long distance gets hard, we think we're the problem. We think the relationship is broken. We forget that we are swimming upstream in a culture that has made slow love, quiet love, enduring love, nearly impossible. And we begin to grieve what was never even allowed to grow. But here's the paradox. In this grief lies the doorway. Because once you see the invisible systems, once you see how society, cognition, and conditioning have shaped your emotional landscape, you can begin to break free. You can begin to love in a way that isn't reactive, but reflective. Not desperate, but deliberate. Not based on proximity, but on profound presence. You can begin to love in a way that doesn't require constant confirmation, because it's rooted in conscious construction. But that, of course, requires a rebellion. And rebellion always begins with a question. What if everything you've been taught about love is wrong? What if distance isn't a test but a teacher? What if the ache isn't a wound but a compass? What if the very thing you thought was pulling you apart was the key to pulling you deeper? To love from a distance is not a weaker version of closeness. It is a crucible, one that strips away illusion, demands intention, and leaves behind only what is real. But to enter that crucible and emerge whole requires rebellion, not a rebellion against your partner, not against circumstance, but against the psychological and cultural programming that told you love must always be convenient, immediate, and easy. This rebellion begins in the mind. But it doesn't end there. It must seep into the bones, the breath, the way you speak and listen. It must become a new way of being. Here are the counterintuitive truths, the liberating shifts that define the path of conscious, long-distance love. 1. Redefine closeness. It's not physical, it's emotional presence. Physical nearness is not the same as intimacy. Many couples sleep in the same bed but feel oceans apart. Others exist across time zones, but know each other's inner worlds with piercing clarity. Closeness is not measured in footsteps. It is measured in courage. the courage to reveal, to receive, to stay when the other is in chaos. You are not far from your partner if your presence is felt when it matters most. This is the first rebellion. To stop measuring love by proximity and start measuring it by presence. 2. Let go of control. Love isn't about certainty. It's about commitment. You will not always know how they feel. You will not always get answers when you want them. This uncertainty is not a flaw. It is the cost of loving a free, evolving human. To rebel is to drop the illusion of control and replace it with devotion. Not devotion to the person as they are today, but devotion to the connection, to the evolving dance between your soul and theirs. Love is not a leash. It's a vow. I will stay awake to this bond, even when I am afraid. 3. Replace performance with authenticity. Stop being good and be real. There is no gold medal for being the perfect long-distance partner. The goal is not to always say the right thing, reply at the right time, or never show need. The goal is depth. Stop polishing your personality to keep them interested. Start showing the parts of yourself that feel most unlovable. This rebellion is raw, messy, human. But in that mess, there is truth, and truth is the only thing love can stand on. 4. Reclaim solitude. Your partner is not your emotional oxygen. When distance stretches across weeks or months, loneliness creeps in. But here lies the paradox. What you often call missing them is sometimes your fear of being alone with yourself. The rebellion is to turn toward that fear. To make solitude sacred, learn to sit in your own silence, to know your own longing not as a problem, but as a path to inner strength. As Viktor Frankl taught us, when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. Let the distance change you, not into someone hardened, but someone deepened. 5. Create myth, not maintenance. Build a story worth living in. So many couples treat long distance like a chore to survive. But what if it became a myth? A shared journey with chapters, symbols and sacred rituals? Name your shared values. Write letters. Create private traditions. Develop symbols for each season of your love. You are not merely surviving the distance. You are authoring a story. And stories, when made sacred, become immortal. 6. Prioritize evolution over comfort. Love dies when it stops evolving. Distance is uncomfortable, but that discomfort can become fertile ground for transformation. Rebel against the instinct to just get through it. Instead, ask, how can we use this season to grow into better lovers, deeper individuals, more awake humans? Study yourselves. Study love. Share the books, the therapy, the journaling. Make distance a dojo, not a desert. This isn't a holding pattern. This is training ground. 7. Build trust through freedom, not surveillance. Tracking apps, constant check-ins, endless questions. All of these feel like safety, but they often breed suspicion, not intimacy. To rebel is to trust from the inside out, not because you have proof of their loyalty, but because you've chosen faith over fear. Trust, real trust, is not passive. It is a daily act of courage. You trust because you are building something sacred, not something monitored. 8. Choose longing over numbing. Most people treat missing someone like a sickness. They distract, scroll, numb. But longing is a sacred ache. It means your heart is still awake. Rebel against the numbness. Feel the ache. Write the poem. Cry in the dark. Let the space between you become holy. You are not weak for missing them. You are alive. 9. Fight for silence, not just words. In long-distance love, communication becomes the focus. But rebellion means knowing when to not speak, to hold silence with reverence. To listen so deeply you hear what your partner doesn't say. Sometimes, the most profound form of love is being with someone in their silence, not rushing to fill it. 10. Reject borrowed models. Build your own relationship architecture. Most of us unconsciously mimic the relationships we've seen: parents, movies, social media. But your love doesn't have to look like anyone else's. The rebellion is creative, inventive, unapologetically unique. Design the relationship that makes sense to you. Break the rules. Bend the norms. Build something no algorithm can predict. Because the strongest love is not the one that fits. It's the one that frees. This is the rebellion. It's not loud. It's not flashy. But it is radical. To love someone across distance. To commit without certainty. To offer your truth instead of a performance. To grow instead of just wait. That is rebellion in its purest form. Most people will never do it. Most people will settle. But you are not most people. If you've come this far, if you've held your love through the dark and the doubt, then you are already part of a deeper revolution. And the final truth waits just ahead. Because once you've rebelled, you're ready to see the world and love with entirely new eyes. You've made it through the miles, the silence, the ache. You've stripped away illusions, confronted your projections, unearthed old wounds. You've stopped asking, "How do I survive this?" and begun asking, "How do I let this change me?" Now one final realization remains, the deepest one. The one that doesn't just shift how you love your partner. It shifts how you love yourself. It reframes what it even means to love at all. Here is the ultimate truth. Love is not something you find. Love is something you become. We spend most of our lives seeking love like it's an object, a destination, a state to be earned through charm, effort, or compatibility. But what if that's never what love was? What if love is not an emotion passed between two people? What if it's a way of being in the world? Distance teaches you this in brutal, beautiful ways. When your partner is gone, what remains? When no one replies, when the silence lingers, when your need cannot be met immediately, what are you left with? Yourself. And in that moment, the real question isn't, "Do they love me?" The question is, can I love from within my own aloneness? This is the spiritual threshold, the existential doorway, the point where love stops being a transaction and starts being a transformation. Carl Jung understood this terrain deeply. He believed that true connection with others could only arise from a connection with the self. The privilege of a lifetime, he wrote, is to become who you truly are. And to become who you truly are, you must burn through every idea that love is something you get and realize it's something you generate. When you stop needing your partner to constantly prove their affection and instead meet your own longing with compassion, when you stop using attention as currency and start offering presence as a gift, when you stop performing to keep someone close and start revealing to stay true to yourself, you don't just save the relationship, you awaken it. You no longer love to be loved. You love because that is who you are. This is the paradox. Distance does not diminish real love. Distance reveals whether love was real to begin with. Because love isn't made real by closeness. It's made real by choice. Every day, despite the absence, despite the ache, despite the fear, you choose. You choose to trust. You choose to open. You choose to stay curious. You choose to offer your heart without guarantees. And that choice is what makes love sacred. No culture can commodify that. No algorithm can optimize it. No fear can destroy it. This is not just relationship advice. It's a spiritual reorientation. You don't wait for love, you become love. You don't demand presence, you embody presence. You don't fear distance, you transcend it. Think of Rilke, who wrote, "Love consists in this, that two solitudes protect and touch, and greet each other." Two solitudes, not two halves completing each other, not two people filling each other's voids, but two complete, conscious beings, greeting one another with reverence, not need. And when you understand this, when you truly let this settle into your bones, something miraculous happens. The fear dissolves. You are no longer afraid of losing them because you've already found yourself. You are no longer obsessed with whether the relationship will last because you know what is real cannot be lost. You are no longer trying to make love work. You are living in a way that makes love possible. And suddenly, long distance no longer feels like a burden. It feels like an initiation, a rite of passage into a new consciousness, one where love is not convenience, but courage, not access, but depth, not security, but surrender. You are not here to replicate the patterns of your past. You are not here to mimic someone else's relationship blueprint. You are not here to shrink, to beg, to chase, to fear. You are here to create, to become, to offer your love as the fiercest, freest thing in the world. So let this be the final truth. The success of a long-distance relationship does not lie in geography. It lies in your capacity to love without possession, to connect without control, to grow without clinging. It lies in your willingness to sit in the fire of uncertainty and emerge with a heart that is not afraid to feel. Because in the end, distance does not break the bond. Disconnection from the self does. But if you stay awake, awake to your longing, your fear, your shadow, your light, then love becomes not just something you endure, it becomes something that awakens you, not just to them, but to everything. And that is love that no distance can touch.